So this little piece of crap is a mini PC that I bought like 3 years ago for $100. And as you can probably imagine, using it feels like browsing the internet on a sloth with frontal lobe damage. It is so slow and frustrating. And considering that I can't really upgrade this thing, in today's video I'm just gonna install weird Linux distros on it, hoping that one of them will eventually heal its brain damage. But before we get into that, today's video is sponsored by boot.dev, which teaches you coding by hooking up to your dopamine receptors and milking them for all they're worth. By which I mean it's gamified. Because sometimes the best motivation is to beat some random stranger on the internet. Learn back-end web development from start to finish with courses on Python, SQL, TypeScript, and a whole bunch more. And it teaches you to code by actually making you do this stuff, which is the best way to learn. All content is free to read and watch, so make an account, but a paid membership unlocks interactive features like hands-on coding, AI assistance, progress tracking, and aforementioned game mechanics. So if you want to learn to code, go to boot.dev and use code Dawid to get 25% off your whole first year. Now for all of you non-sweats out there, a Linux distro or distribution is basically all of the different types of Linux skins that live on top of the base Linux kernel. The kernel being the essential core components of a Linux operating system. And if you don't understand that, don't worry, I barely do, but you just need to know the different Linux distros are like different brands of Linux operating system. With that, let's have a look at our terrible little system. Now in terms of hardware, we've got a little bit of RAM, which unfortunately we can't do anything about. We've also got a tiny bit of painfully slow storage. But luckily, this system has an old Celeron chip in it, which I'm assuming is gonna be pretty widely compatible with a bunch of esoteric Linux distros. This is an assumption though, but I'm kinda hoping this thing will work with whatever we're gonna throw at it in this video. Spoiler, it really doesn't. Now the first thing we need to do is determine just how butt-cheeks riddled this thing's ass is, and we're gonna do that with Dawid's standardized test of butt-cheekery. Now test number 1 is the boot time test. 3, 2, 1, start. Now one of the things that is a little bit ambiguous about this test, this thing boots in, but then even though it looks like it's a functional Windows 10, it still takes a while for the system to wake up. Oh. Lap, I guess. It switched to the desktop at 1 minute 28 seconds, and then testing for responsiveness seemed really difficult to do repeatably, so we're just gonna use that result. Interestingly, I redid the test, and this time it booted way faster in just 43-ish seconds. So I guess there's a difference between a cold and a hot start, which meant I could move on to test number 2, which is the industry standard how long does Firefox take to launch test. Start. Okay. Stop. Okay, that's about 8.5 seconds. It's not completely abysmal. I remember it being way worse than that. And in fact, when I was testing general system responsiveness, it kind of felt like Windows knew it was on the chopping block and was putting its best foot forward, because it was way more responsive than previous experiences I've had with it. Whoa, this is the worst I've seen Half-Life 2 run in recent memory. This is shocking. Now this gaming test is a little bit optimistic. I can't imagine that many of the distros we're gonna try will actually let us run this game, but I guess that's then a point in Windows's favor if this abattoir runoff counts as it running the game. So now that we have our terrible baseline, which aside from the Half-Life actually isn't as bad as I remember it being, but anyway, we have a yardstick to compare our various Linux distros to. So with that, let's start with the first one. Now the first distro that I'm using, I don't even really know if it's a distro. I don't know what I just downloaded on here. I think it's called RLSD, which is meant to be like a lightweight distro that's kinda retro themed, but every time I made the installation, the system just freaked out, so I don't know if this is gonna work, but we're gonna give it a try. Okay, so the Lexar USB flash drive does show up. I guess we just hit that and see what it does. Oh! It's doing a thing. Wow, look at that.
2 hours later.
Is it stuck on this? I'm gonna try press a button. Let's see what that does. It's gone from flashing over there to flashing over here. Start. I don't know what to do. I think I need to restart it. I'm gonna do that. Hey! It worked that time. Look at that. You know this is a serious operating system when the main thing that it does is just show you overlay. Oh! So you right click and then you can choose different desktops. That's very fancy. I'm so sorry for the beeping. I really hope that you can't hear it very clearly, but there is Megatron is laying down Bumblebee and they're just going to town on each other outside. It lets me change between 4 different empty desktops. Terminating, oh, I just pressed the console button. Why did it break all of it? I then restarted again, which was promising for half a second as a taskbar flashed in front of my eyes, but then immediately took down the whole system. So I'm gonna take it as this distro not working on the Thinty and move on to the next one. Next, we're gonna try Hannah Montana OS, because of course there's a Hannah Montana based Linux distro. Now actually earlier I did try the Justin Bieber Linux distro, but it seems like the little Thinty isn't compatible with it, which I was very disappointed by. Okay, that shows up in a very convincing way. Damn! We're gonna go into the BIOS and we're gonna change some settings. Because with Justin Bieber OS, I managed to get it to try and work once I changed the boot mode select over to legacy. That actually let it kind of attempt an install, like it kind of posted off the USB, but it couldn't find files and stuff. So I'm curious to see if this fixes Hannah Montana OS. That is progress, look at that. Do I want to try Hannah Montana Linux? No, we want to install it, right? Oh, it's not. Oh no, never mind. The problem with Hannah Montana Linux is that it's not as funny as Justin Bieber Linux, just purely because Justin Bieber Linux can be abbreviated into Bibian, which is way better than Hannah Montanian, I guess? Montanian? Hannian? Hannian? I don't know, my brain glitched a little there, but this is progress. It's either broken or the next stage is about to happen. Okay, we're starting to lean towards broken. Yeah, but my brain rot can't handle it anymore. We're gonna shut it down. Hey! That's better than last time. We can actually do stuff now. Very exciting. Yay! We may actually... Okay, I shouldn't celebrate yet. Install Hannah Montana Linux. So I'm pretty sure Hannah Montana Linux is Ubuntu based, whereas Bibian is Puppy based. And as far as I understand it, Puppy is a very lightweight version of Linux. So again, I'm real upset that we're stuck with Hannah Montana as opposed to Bibian. But we might not even be stuck with this yet, because we don't know if it works. I think it's crashed again. It did just crash again, and despite trying different BIOS settings and trying to run Hannah Montana OS just off the USB drive, nothing worked. And my theory as to why these two didn't work is because they came out in like the early 2010s, so they had really old Linux kernels which might not support some of the hardware in the little Thinty mini PC. Because interestingly, I managed to install Bibian on an old Optiplex. That worked fine. So for the next distros, we need to look out for ones that weren't written by the ancient Mayans to bully children. Next, we're trying Satanic OS, which is a thing that exists for some reason. It's slightly newer than the other two that I've tried, so I'm not 100% sure it's gonna work, but it might. As far as I understand, this one is just some form of Ubuntu with some Satan on it. Wow, there's stuff happening. It's hacker manning, which is usually a good sign when it comes to Linux. We can't have Satan OS be the first one that works. That would be so... that would be so wild. Yeah, so it seems like the early 2000s were the golden era of meme Linux distros. Okay, that was terrifying. We have a mouse. Hey! We are now offline. I'd hope so. I don't want to connect this to the internet. I mean, this just looks like a picture of Namibia with like red tint over it. There's a little thing under there that I can click on, and then nothing happens. Oh wait, what? It gave me, oh, click to restore hidden windows. I think at this point we don't have hidden windows. Right click doesn't do anything. Oh, applications. Hey, okay. We've actually got a functional bit of Satan happening. It's not even like hell-themed games. Is this whole Satanic edition just a background? It's very responsive. Look at that. We like click on things and stuff happens, which is way better than what we saw with Windows 10. We haven't installed it yet. I think that it's running off the flash drive at this point, which kind of makes its snappiness even more impressive. Install, okay, here. So I do want to install it on the internal storage so that we can do the boot speed test. It wants us to be connected to the internet. I don't want it to do that. I have no options. Install now. What is it installing it on? No root file system is defined. Yeah, I know. I can't. It doesn't let me click on anything. If it's gonna make me connect to the internet, I'm not going to do that because I don't trust something called Satan OS to have my best interests at heart. I don't know. If that's a requirement for the installation, then unfortunately, that's not gonna happen in this video. Yes, I want to cancel the installation. I also, something bad needs to happen to whoever decided to put a dark black font on a slightly less dark black background. After this, I tried to install it through the terminal using some instructions online, but this was way above my pay grade. It doesn't say anything about that in the instructions. Do I ignore? I don't know what the disk label is. I don't know. What does any of this mean? Which unfortunately meant I couldn't fairly compare the boot speed to Windows, but there was something else I could test fairly. Firefox startup time. 3, 2, 1... That was very fast. That was very, very quick. Under 3 seconds is wild, especially considering that it's off a flash drive, although it's not really useful because we don't want to catch some Satan aids. And it definitely loses some points for the gaming experience. They didn't even re-theme Minesweeper. So disappointing. Okay, let's try something else. This is our first serious attempt. The distro that I have on here is called TinyCore, and it's one of the most lightweight Linux distros that you can find. The install on here is just 23 meg. Hopefully this works. I think that it's still being maintained. Ooh, this also doesn't seem super happy, but let's say boot TinyCore. Wow, that booted so quickly considering that it's not been installed. That's just off the USB. And there we go. We've got TinyCore editor, so we can do some typing. This is me doing some. Now, what is interesting about TinyCore is that the most basic version of it, as far as I understand, doesn't even have a GUI, like a graphical user interface. You just have a terminal command line that you interact with the operating system with, which is crazy. That is my idea of hell. Straight off the bat, this is insanely snappy. Like everything you click on happens instantly, which makes sense. I think this is designed for real butt-cheek systems. Next, I wanted to see if TinyCore was the first of these distros that would actually install on the little mini PC, which sent me down a whole rabbit hole of suffering. The first set of instructions I found was how to install TinyCore using the terminal, which, as we've seen, is not my natural habitat. This process did not go well. In fact, I even called up my brother, who's a programmer that actually understands how to use Linux, and well, he was very little help.
There's a madness that you have installed.
He just made me click around stuff for ages before coming to the conclusion that you shouldn't really install TinyCore because it's like a non-permanence operating system, which just means that it resets back to square one every time you restart the system. But after a couple days, I decided to go back to it because, well, there are instructions on how to install it on the system, so you should be able to, right? This time, I found what I assumed to be the correct instructions, which explains how to actually install the bit of software that TinyCore uses to install on the system. But eventually, after struggling through the correct instructions this time, I actually got TinyCore to install on the little PC. And it ran real well. Now we need to see how long it's gonna take to boot. So 3, 2, 1, start. Whoa! That's a blazing fast boot time. That's less than half the time it took Windows to boot. Interestingly, Firefox actually took slightly longer to launch than it did on Satan OS, but way faster than Windows. Although TinyCore's general system responsiveness is in a different world to Windows on this system, although we couldn't play any games on it, which means it's finally time to find a more general replacement for Windows. Now, for a more fully featured distro, I decided to try Catchy OS, because that's the current distro everybody's always telling me to use, and it didn't go great. For the first 3 boot attempts, I was just stuck in this screen. I couldn't move the cursor around or anything. I then went into the BIOS and changed to UEFI mode, which actually helped us launch into Catchy OS once. But the installation didn't want to start, so I decided to restart Catchy OS for some reason, and then I couldn't ever get it to boot again, which was about as far as I got. At which point I decided to try Mint instead, which launched first try and also installed onto the system's hard drive first try. It did take like 3 hours though, but it installed, which meant I finally had a full Windows replacement running on the little system. Although in terms of performance, well, it's honestly not that different to Windows. In terms of boot time, it actually lost to Windows' second attempt. Luckily, Firefox did launch a little bit faster than it did on Windows. And I'd say general system responsiveness was maybe a hair better than Windows, but barely. Now luckily, Mint did actually manage to play Half-Life 2, although it did take super long for it to load the Vulkan shaders or whatever. But when it comes to outright Half-Life performance, again, it's basically the same open sewer as we saw with Windows, which isn't that unexpected. With that, thank you for watching. Go check out this video where I try and repair my MacBook Pro terribly. Subscribe on the way down there, and until the next video, thank you for watching. Bye-bye. Thanks again to Boot.dev for sponsoring today's video with their practical hands-on coding courses. They even have an AI bear called Boots that'll step in and explain problems to you if you don't understand them. So click on the link down below to check out Boot.dev.